Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial technician. Whether you've had years of success in your business or just starting out, HighLift Financial can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family, and align these for generational wealth. So as they say, what happens in your life affects your business. And now, on to the show. Well, hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with me, Matt DiFrancesco. And so I'm really excited today because I have a special guest who deals in helping companies solve backlog problems that they have. Now, we know in the collision industry, many times because of maybe inadequate processes or just because they don't have softwares that are communicating with each other, there can tend to be some backlogs. And so I've got a guest on who can help to solve that problem. It's Phillip Brown. He's the founder of Blu Pitt, which is a software consulting firm, and they're dedicated to improving project management automation. He's worked with a number of different companies, including Disney, Harley-Davidson, and NASA, and he's been really working in kind of the middle-sized business area, helping just companies streamline their projects and project management systems. So I'm really excited to kind of talk about how Phil's solutions can help businesses out there to streamline their processes. So Phil, welcome to Your Business, Your Life.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm actually kind of curious before we get started, because I know your company is called Blu Pitt, and I was looking at your website and there's a pit bull that's on there. So what kind of curious how you came up with the name Blu Pitt.
On my website, that is my pit bull who has since passed, but he is the inspiration for the name of the company. I spend quite a lot of time trying to decide on a name, and every name that I decided on was taken by somebody else or registered somewhere. So he was staring at me one night, and I'm like, hey, why don't I try Blu Pitt? So I just was creative with the name, and that worked. That is my memoriam to him. He gets to be the face of my website. So
That's awesome. So Phil, let's just give the audience a little bit of a background. What led you down the path to helping businesses to streamline these project management processes?
I started out, I've been working with computer programming for years, trying to do really cool stuff in that software engineering and programming arena. And I fell into an opportunity with a company to learn their project management software. And once I did that, I realized that there's tons of companies out there that they managing all their projects and everything on like Excel spreadsheets and other different pieces and parts that don't really come together.
Mhm.
And this software that I happened onto actually combines everything together with a little, programming magic and integrations back then before there were some of the advancements there are today. I was able to make systems work together in an automated fashion where somebody didn't have to go and take it from one system and enter it into the project management system and then go to another one and enter it into the project management system, so that the owners or founders or CEOs could see a complete holistic view of what their projects were throughout the company. And that's kind of what led me down the path to open my own business and go out and help companies kind of refine their processes and understand how they can automate everything by either integrating their software together, consolidating their software, or even in some instances, trashing what they have and moving to a more advanced software.
Oh, exactly. And, as we discussed earlier, my niche is with the collision industry, as you can tell from the background. And, I was telling you about some of the challenges the collision shop owners face, basically moving vehicles through their shop, is probably the biggest challenge outside of hiring and retaining top talent. So there's two areas I want to talk a little bit about, but I want to ask you just a question. And even though we're dealing with the collision industry, business is business. So,
Right.
it's going to work, and maybe the integration of systems might be a little different, but for the most part, they all work. So tell me a little bit about how do you think that business owners can gain better controls over their workflows? And maybe specifically, I don't know if you can specifically talk to in the collision industry, but how that may work there.
Well, the way that I think of it, and forgive me for not being an expert. I know there's probably some guys out there listening that are going to go, "Well, we don't really do that." But you go to, I'll back it up to, like, if you go to, you can go to a junkyard. They have an inventory of everything that they have in there, right? So you're trying to find a new piece for your car or whatever. because you banged your door up, or I don't know, something like that. So you got to go get a new door. You don't want to buy a new one from, a manufacturer because it's, oftentimes a lot more expensive.
Mhm.
Everybody has a system of inventory. So imagine if you had at your fingertips everybody's inventory and you could just search for what you needed, whether it was new at a junkyard, at OEM factory coming out of Mexico or somewhere else, and you could just pick what you wanted, a quality rating on who was a better for like the parts quality on certain pieces, all the aspects that you take into consideration when somebody comes into your shop and they need something done to their car. If it's a large collision, oftentimes you have to replace a ton of things.
Right.
It's not just replacing a body part. There could be, the underlying frame. You could have different bolts that don't match, all kinds of different pieces on a car. You could have computer pieces you have to go find. What I help is through that process, you probably go to a bunch of different websites or a bunch of different pieces of software that have all those categorized in there to find out, okay, well, for this estimate, how am I going to serve my customer, give them the highest quality and the best price, and sometimes satisfy the insurance company that's going to send an adjuster out and say, maybe we can get a little bit lower on this, or we don't cover that, or something like that, right?
Right.
So I can go into the company and say, what is your current process? How do you do this? What is manual? What do you already have that's kind of automated? And in most cases, I can take anywhere from 40 to 70% of what they do and automate that. So
Wow.
that gives you 40 to 70% of your time back to either do that repair faster, repair something else faster, or do something else within your business. I like to say that, when I automate things, that I give the owner time back to work on their business
Right.
instead of in their business, right?
Right.
So they can actually go out and figure out different ways to get new customers and new clients coming in, or they can work on that secondary or tertiary line of income coming in. Maybe the collision repair is your main source, but you have a secondary source where you're wrapping cars, or a third source where you're doing something else, right?
Right.
So you can, in a lot of cases, integrate and automate your main source to where you have more time working on the others.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because, part of my process when I'm working with clients and we're looking at how to create less owner dependency on the business, because that first off, that raises value. But second, a lot of times owners, as they're getting older, are looking at, there's other things I want to do in my life. I've been doing this all, sometimes they physically can't do these things, but they still love the business. And so the less dependent we can make on the business, the greater can be. And so I'll be going through like a management succession worksheet and like who can take over certain responsibilities that you have. But it's interesting because a lot of times, and they don't think about these things. They look at vendors, and then there's also software. And the question always becomes the who's, not hows. We
Right.
always try to look, how can we do things better, instead of saying, who can I get or what can I get that's going to take over this process, that's going to free me up to do something else. So I think that's a really valid point that you made there. One of the areas, and we talked about this, and this is where sometimes the backlog, and it's with those shops that are really passionate about fixing vehicles correctly. And one of the biggest time sucks that they have is going in and researching OEM procedures. I mean, it takes a lot of time. They search. Sometimes they get conflicting information and it's going back and forth. And they need to have this, especially if they want to repair the vehicles right, to be able to go back to the insurance company to say, look, this is what the manufacturer states needs to be done to properly repair the vehicle in the way that it was designed, which was to protect the passengers. So are there some ways that shop owners would be able to reduce that time researching and still get this correct information?
A year or two ago, I would have said it's kind of difficult because you have to go to a bunch of disparate sources to get that information. Now, with the new buzzword of AI, right? Everyone's using like Chat GPT. I don't know if your audience is familiar with Chat GPT or some of those other large language models, but there is a new space coming out where organization can create their own large language model and train it the way that they want it to be trained. So essentially, imagine taking all of those pieces of documentation that tell you what's the best way to do this and have them in one source and then just ask it the question. Instead
Right.
of you having to answer it, you ask it the question and it says, oh, yeah, you can use this information along with this documentation and send it to the adjuster. And then you'll have the validation you need to tell them why it has to be fixed a certain way or with a certain part, right?
Right. Right.
So
Well,
it's kind
so
of like having an encyclopedia at your hands
right.
that says this is the right way to do it, and this is why we can't do it the other way.
Right. I think that brings up another question because I know with AI, and AI is doing a lot of great things right now, but it's still imperfect. And
Mhm.
really, what it comes down to is that the software has to be trained by users. About a year ago, I had on an expert in AI who was a ethicist, and we were talking about that. She quoted there was a court case, I think it was in Wisconsin or something like that, and I think the prosecution had used AI to develop their closing arguments, and the defense got a hold of it and realized that some of the cases that were cited were not actual cases.
Right. Yeah.
So,
There's a level of knowledge. I mean, as a shop owner, a business owner, you obviously have the highest level of knowledge for what you do.
right,
And you would have to do your own research. But what this does is it takes out the arduous task of going to the different sources and finding the pieces of documentation that you need to look at.
right,
Now you can take it and ask it a question and it says, okay, well, you can look at this from this source and you can look at this document from this source and you can take it and then you can even have it summarize the document for you, which is accurate because you're giving it the piece to summarize, right? It's not
right,
going to go out and get some fake information. And you can see if what you need is in there. It's really all in the training. If you take an encyclopedia set and train it on that encyclopedia set, it's only going to give you information out of that encyclopedia set. It's not going to make up information from, Junior's book report that he loaded up online 10 years ago where he was like faking all the information in it, right?
yeah, exactly. I think the more you use it, the more it's going to reduce time. And I know a lot of times I'll use it if I'm writing an article or putting a presentation together where to get a basic framework, but I always kind of have to go in and I always just kind of cross-reference stuff. Is this
Yeah.
giving me the right information? But again, I think and correct me if I'm wrong on this, what you're saying is that it can speed up the process to get you to the source that you need.
Yeah, I think of training your own LLM like training an employee, right?
Right.
Some new guy is going to come in and he's not going to be the best at doing things the way that you want to do them at first.
Mhm.
But after you train him for 6 months, a year, whatever, he can probably do it pretty damn close, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's the same concept of training your own LLM on, whatever you need to train it on is once it gets the data in there and understands how you think about it, and you can tell it it's wrong. You can say, no, that's wrong. That's not the right reference. You need to be referencing this. And it'll say, oh, okay. And it'll learn off of that. And
Right.
it won't make the same mistake twice.
Yes.
I might make the same mistake twice. That the computer's not going to make it twice because you already told it once, no, that was wrong. So, and that's kind of the difference between training a person and training a large language model to give you information is it understands it the first time you tell it it's wrong. And if you tell it the right answer, then it'll always remember that right answer. This is just one piece to reduce your time to research, right? Because like you said, it takes a long time to do research. And especially when you have an insurance adjuster who may not have the level of knowledge that you have, but you still have to go prove to him, yeah, here's why you need to do it this way, right?
Right. And that he's also getting he's getting orders from the ones above. So he's pretty
Exactly.
much I know a lot of adjusters that are just burned out because, they can understand the shop owners what they're trying to do and why they're charging what they charge, but their higher ups are not saying, nope, this isn't the way it's going to go. So
Yeah.
that's why I think documentation is so
Exactly.
important in that process. So I think that'd be a really big time saver. So one thing, and we talked a little bit about this when we did our pre-call. So we got in the collision industry, and there's a lot of different moving parts. They'll have their CRM, and then they'll have their estimating software, whether it's CCC or Mitchell or whatever they're using. And then they might have a workflow process. Is there a way that you can come in and help them to coordinate all of these systems to be able to work and function in a more smooth manner?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's a part of the whole process. So,
Okay.
they have that workflow. It could be manual right now where they know they have to go to their CRM and enter everything into the CRM, and then they have to go into CCC and they have to enter data in there to get whatever estimate they need to get back, right? And what I do help with is integrating those into one system
Ah,
to
okay.
where you can just enter in your customer information, and that automatically gets entered into the CRM behind the scenes, and you can stay in that same screen and then press a button and pull up the estimate and do all your estimations there. And that's pulling information from CCC or wherever it needs to pull information from.
Right.
And you have everything in one location. That's the concept behind that automation and integration is it's going to send the information out to where it needs to go, and it's going to give you one point to where you can stay in that system instead of having to go to multiple pieces of software and multiple websites, tabs, whatever, right? I
Right.
know a lot of times, there's one computer that does one thing and another computer that does another thing,
Yeah.
and then you have your main computer where you're on the web, you're searching the internet, right?
Right.
So, and this kind of would be able to integrate everything together. And that can be a custom solution. And that can be also, there might be something out there that's already close to what you need that just needs some slight tweaking and
Right.
configuring to your industry or what you do within your industry, right?
Right.
So I know there's lots of different caveats and lots of different areas within, automotive and collision and everything like that. So.
Right. Yeah. And there is a lot of software I know that's starting to come out that helps these communicates. But I think I like the idea of tweaking it because I think every shop owner runs their process is a little different. And I think, again, you can't always use a cookie cutter approach for every problem. But if you can get utilizing those different systems and then tweak them in a way that it creates a much smoother workflow, I think there's a real benefit to that.
Yeah, and the software, you're not going to, I can't say you're not going to, but 98% of the time, the software you buy off the shelf or
Hmm.
from a vendor is not going to be perfect to your business unless you do some kind of configuration to it. And that often involves bringing in someone who knows that software
Right.
and can take what's in your head and put it into that software configuration so that it works the way that you need it to work to best run your business.
Awesome. No, I think that's great. So just I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because one of the things you had on this about helping, we do project management, of course, which will automatically boost ROI. But then you talked about retaining top talent. And this is another big issue in the industry. First off, there's a tech shortage.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find techs. And then when you've got them, about retaining them. Again, a lot of the areas I work on are the financial vehicles to keep them incentivized to do it. But what are some ways through this automation and streamlining processes that you can help to retain top talent?
Well, I mean, the cool thing is a lot of what I find causes the churn
Hmm.
is working with the software is not their main thing, right? You
Hmm.
get a tech that comes in, and if he's not familiar with the software or she's not familiar with the software, and they really don't want to have to deal with that, they just want to do what they do. When you automate things and when you kind of smooth out the process and make it more efficient, it makes them less stressed about doing that and more happy about doing their thing, right?
Right.
It basically gives them time to do the thing that they like doing as opposed to all the extra stuff that may be necessary, but they don't necessarily like to do that. I always, for instance, in my industry in software development, a lot of issues that I always had and peers of mine always had is documentation.
Right.
We love writing software, but we hate telling you how we did it or what each step of the software does and why it does it.
Right.
So now they have software that does that for you while you write the program. So programmers are a lot happier because they can just program, right? They don't have to do the documentation, it's done for them. So
Right.
things like that makes your employees a lot happier, and they can, basically spend more time doing the thing that they were hired to do, where obviously their expertise lies, right?
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
you don't want them to have to do other things that maybe takes up, 1 or 2 hours of their time because they have to go write something down, or they have to document exactly how they did something, or they have to go do some orders, or they have to make phone calls to find out where their paint supply is, or why this vendor didn't show up this week, or why something's on back order, right?
Mhm.
So if they can just get that updated for them every morning so they know, oh, I don't have this yet, so I got to go and do this instead, then they don't have to worry about it. It's like a no-brainer. They come in and they're like, okay, now I know what to do.
That's
And they
great.
just
Yeah.
do what they do.
It's funny. That's one thing my coach is big on is your daily task list and like having that prepared ahead of time. And I think that's something that can help to smooth out that process because, in any business, the best laid plans of mice and men will get screwed up somehow. All right. And sometimes it's not our own fault when that happens. But I think again, being able to utilize technology, kind of streamline that can allow an employee to just then focus on what their unique ability is. I think that's where most employees get frustrated and most owners when they're outside of whatever their unique ability is. And that's what builds up the frustrations. And then it causes stress, and then that causes backlogs. And I can see exactly where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, you hire them to do collision repair work, not computer work, not
Yeah.
paperwork, right?
That's exactly right. So, can you give us an example of maybe one of the clients that you worked with and how you were able to kind of streamline some of their processes? And it doesn't have to be collision, but just kind of in general to give the audience an idea of what you do.
So it's not collision, but at least it's still within the, I'll say, automotive industry. So
Okay.
with Harley-Davidson, one of the biggest issues that they had is they had an old project management software, and a lot of their project managers were doing things off the software because it was very difficult to use.
Right.
So they were doing things in Excel, in other spreadsheets. Sometimes they were doing it themselves on paper
Oh,
and
wow.
just keeping track of how they were managing their own different projects within the company. What they asked me to do, along with a team of people like me, is come in and say, okay, here's what our process is on a typical project, and that could be, I think the project that they were working on that they gave us at the time was they were working on the electric motorcycle.
Okay.
They were trying to fine tune their electric motorcycle at the time. And they wanted us to kind of fix it, and it's hard
Right.
when somebody says it, we just want you to fix it.
Yeah.
So, we spent probably a couple weeks in the room with a lot of project managers coming and going, saying, okay, what is your process? How do you do this? Why do you do this? If we changed it to do, tweak it this way, is that going to help you? It's a real back and forth thing because you don't want to change the process so much that it
Right.
alienates what they're already doing,
Correct.
because part of the whole system is change management. You want somebody to use it after you finish changing it, right?
Right.
So once we got that taken care of, and we reassured them and we said, look, we're going to take all of your documentation you've been keeping on the side. We're going to take your Excel spreadsheets. We're going to take whatever else you've been using, and we'll do the job of loading it into this new software for you. And then we're going to sit you in a room and show you how to play with that and get it to where you need it within your own projects. And we took real life examples with them. I mean, it wasn't a production system, but it was their project in our test environment
Right.
that they could play with and kind of see how they could manipulate. Okay, here's what I need for assets for this new motorcycle project. Here's the resources, meaning the people that I need to have involved in this, and at what stage they need to be involved at this, how many hours approximately they need to be involved with this project, how much that's going to cost the company, what kind of budget I need to ask for, because obviously they need to ask for a specific budget that they have to work within, but they don't want to ask for too little because then it's going to run over. They don't want to ask for too much because they're going to have questions at the end, like, well, why did you ask for that much if you only spent, half of it or a third of it or 3/4 of it? So, and that's what we help them kind of pan out and understand. And
Right.
and at the end, they were happy with the product that we provided. We found a good, robust project management software that worked within their company with what they wanted. We helped them configure it. We took them off of the Excel spreadsheets, the Microsoft project. We took them off of the notepads that they were keeping everywhere and whatever, sticky notes, whatever else they were
Yeah.
trying to use to manage their projects with.
Right.
And it eliminated a lot of confusion because when you're managing things from spreadsheets that aren't centralized or from pieces of paper, you can get confused. You have mechanics that don't know what they're supposed to do today, and you have a project manager that's like, I don't know, let me go find out what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm supposed to have you do today. When it's all in a system, again, it comes back to they come in, they know what their tasks are, they mark that they've done their tasks, like, okay, I finished this piece, now what's next? This is the next piece. The project manager can go and report that to the C-suite management and say, hey, we're 50% done. We've hit this milestone on these tasks, and this is where we're at. And it reduces the stress.
Mhm.
It makes everybody happier. And when you have a happy employees, that's where your retention comes in.
Exactly. No, that sounds great. So we're getting close to time here. Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
I think the biggest thing is, don't think that what I do isn't for your industry because, every client, every customer that you bring in, when they come in with a problem or a wrecked car, that is a project in and of itself, right? I call project management from the idea to the completion. Well, the idea in this case is you come up with a mangled car, you know, and the end result is that car looks like new, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what I would see a project as in the collision and repair industry,
Right. Yeah.
and
Well, exactly.
yeah, and that's how you need to look at it for efficiency purposes too, because if you just sit back and think of everything that goes into one repair, like from beginning to end, it's insane.
Oh, it's
And
great.
sometimes you don't think about it. Sometimes you're just doing it because you're doing it and you've been doing it for years. But, it's like we never think about how many steps we take in a day because we're just walking places, right? But
Right.
it's usually a lot.
Exactly.
And that's what I'll leave you with is don't think somebody like me doesn't have something that's applicable to your industry because a lot of times it can definitely help and it
Mhm.
can save you time and make it more efficient to where you don't have a huge backlog. You don't have to turn away customers because you don't have any more time. You don't have enough resources, enough
Mhm.
staff, right?
Right. Well, and and actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking it was actually part of our conversation. There's some of the very elite shops always do what's called post repair inspections to
Mhm.
ensure that the vehicle's done. And it's a very small percentage, but I can see where having these automations can help them, even on that post repair
Yeah.
inspection, to be able to make sure that this vehicle is going out as they expected. And I think that's a really important part. And part of my preaching on this is I think more shops need to be doing this. So I think you really do provide a great solution out there, being able to help shop owners to be able to increase these workflows. Because, the bottom line, especially in the collision repair industry, is that you got a limited amount of space. So, really, what it comes down to is moving more cars through and then increasing the profitability on the cars. And a lot of profitability comes down to time. So, by decreasing time, better workflows, I think you can see overall great revenue increases and all that. So, I really appreciate you being on, Phil. We're going to have all of your contact information in the show notes. So anybody who's interested or maybe just wants to talk to Phil, on his website, you can just schedule a time to just talk with him, talk about your situation, see if you may be able to help.
Yes.
So,
Everything's on the site, email, phone number. You can click and schedule an appointment with me. We can definitely talk and see
good.
if I can help you out.
Sounds good. So anyway, we'll do that. But like I said, we'll have it all in the show notes. So Phil, thank you very much for being on Your Business, Your Life. And the last thanks goes out to you, the audience. Thank you for listening to Your Business, Your Life with me, Matt DiFrancesco. If you've not subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe button below. That way, when a new episode drops, it'll come right down onto your device. If you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, Google Play, or YouTube, and you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review. That way, we can get more great guests like Phil out to more and more people. So, with that, again, Phil, thank you very much for being on, and see everyone real soon. So take care and God bless. Hey, I really want to thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. If you want to be notified when new episodes become available, click the subscribe button below.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of High Lift Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, DBA High Lift Financial, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state security authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.